It's my pleasure now to introduce our esteemed panel of guests. You've heard from Dr. Talbot with some very wonderful story-driven narratives about where wellness can lead people. This panelists that we've assembled before you tackle wellness from a whole bunch of different viewpoints, and that was a really intentional plan by Megan and the team at Calgary Economic Development. Really, there's one thread, though, that's running through all this. Some of you are a business crowd. It is good economic sense to keep employees well. It makes a lot of sense for our staff here at the YMCA. We're very big on retaining staff and giving them leadership opportunities. I know all of you are in your respective disciplines and lines of work. But when it comes down to it, a healthy staff member, a healthy employee is a great contributor, not only to your business, but our economy and our city. But to give you a sense of who's up here talking to you today. One is a very dear friend and colleague. Right here up in the YMCA, we've got, it used to be the CEO's office, but we're growing so fast. We're operating 3 new health facilities on behalf of the City of Calgary. We're growing so quickly, there are now 4 vice presidents in the old CEO's office. Shannon Durham is my neighbor to the left. Shannon is the Vice President of Health and Wellness, a relatively new position for the Y, even though we've been in health and wellness for 112 years. Her focus is on partnerships and strategies. She's the key instigator around programs and membership and impact here at the Y. So Shannon Durham, just give a wave. That's Shannon. We'll do all the big applause later. Let's move on. You guys are already sweaty. I don't want to see any more. Kurt Hansen, Director of Recreation for the City of Calgary, one of our great allies in creating all opportunities in recreation and wellness in the city. He has been in the public sector for 30 years, extensively as a therapist with Alberta Mental Health Services, and more extensively over the past 2 decades with the City of Calgary. Does some great work. Kurt Hansen. Joe Bavelka, a new name for me, but somebody I've just met today, a leisure and recreation author and speaker. He's an associate professor in the Bachelor of Health and Physical Education program at Mount Royal University. He's studied leisure for over 25 years, and really his teaching focus lies in ecotourism and outdoor leadership. We've coaxed him inside today, but to give us a perspective on what outside work means to wellness. And then Pam Cooper. She is the manager of health services for the company ConocoPhillips. Pam is a graduate with a Master's of Science degree, so she knows of what she speaks. She's been developing and implementing health programs with her company for many years as the manager of health services. More importantly, she's the mom of a 4-year-old who's at home with dad tonight instead of partying with us. So let's hear it for all our distinguished panelists. What we'd like to do now is, and being mindful of time, because we do have cheese. Cheese is good for you, right? Doctor? Yeah, forget it. We would like to open things up to, do we have microphones in the audience? I think there's some microphones, it's a small room. If you've got some questions, you can just pop up and let us know. I'm going to take moderator's prerogative and ask the first one. And what I'd like to do is, I'll pose one question, and I'd like each person on the panel, maybe in descending order, starting with Pam, to answer it. If you were the mayor of wellness in Calgary, if you had whatever that magic sugar is that Nenshi seems to have, that we all sprinkle, and you could change one thing to really create the opportunity for more people to be well, in whatever that means for you, especially maybe in the business context, what's the one thing you might change, whether it's policy or approach or just getting something out of the way? Pam, how would you answer that? Maybe through a ConocoPhillips lens. What would you change?
Wow, okay.
Cerebral, hey?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know. Is this on? Do I have to turn it on?
I have no idea.
Oh, it's on.
It's
okay. I just got to lean in. One thing to change from a business perspective. I think what would be great is to have not just, I think is having all people accept the fact that you need time during the day to regenerate, renew, refresh. And I definitely, our senior leadership team is there, and it's well accepted, and we've shown that by actually offering classes not only at the early morning time or the lunch hour time or after work. We have we put it forward to them to say, we want to offer the 10 o'clock or the 10:30 class or the 1:30 class. And we want it because there's a need to offer this because the classes are full. And that didn't go over with everybody very well, but we didn't get a no. So I think it's the acceptance that, you know what, whatever time works for you, you should be allowed to do that. And whatever it means, it doesn't have to be a prescriptive thing.
Joe, I'm not asking for a magic bullet, but I'm actually asking for an opinion on what could change and what could morph so your students see a better future for their patients and the people that they deal with down the road. What would change?
I'm not sure so much for my students right now, but just in terms of the city and where we live, I think the way we move is so if I was to be king of all of this, I would decree changes in terms of how we move, more greenways, beltways, allow people to move in a self-propelled manner much more effectively and make it more fun, put more commerce around there so your trip home becomes a part of your day. So very simply, the way we move and to integrate that more into everyday life.
Kurt, I'll give you back your watch if you tell me your answer.
Before I answer, I usually ask my wife first what I should say, and she's not here, so I'll venture out on my own. It's part of a wellness plan I've adopted. She's not here, is she? No. Twofold. I would answer this with two different pieces. One, which is we are in a hectic community. And I think balance is something we forget about. And when you think wellness, there's a lot of factors, and I call them rooms in people's life, their health room, their work room, their family room, their leisure room, and it's one whole house, if you will, from an imagery point of view. How do you take on a personal plan to identify, and I haven't done that well, but you need to know that that's important to be good in every room and take strengths out of rooms to identify a personal balance plan that works at. Encourage people to do that. The second thing, for people to enable that, I think from a policy point of view, I really do firmly believe that for us to address things in a more collaborative and collective manner, to open doors, we have community assets and public assets that are the public's. We need to optimize access to them in whatever way we can outside of jurisdictions in order to make sure that people get opportunities to utilize them. They're no good closed and not being utilized. I don't want to be quoted on this, but I've been told by the medical profession 50% of heart attacks can happen up in Northeast Calgary. The ability to be referred for assistance with those, about 20% might follow through. So is that access? Is it so? And how do we collectively get to the health point part from the illness part? And so maybe there's other ways we can undertake collaborative approaches to how we execute services in a fashion that makes it best for the citizen in the right way in the right place. Thank you. My wife would agree.
Shannon, as somebody who's literally got the keys in this organization to how we program and what we can do to contribute, what would you change in our city, in our community, to increase wellness?
It's taken me 3 years to answer that question, Ken. But what I would say is more play. And I think that it's fantastic that the city is hosting the conference. And I think
we are.
Okay. The city and all of us are hosting this conference in 2017.
I think he just voluntold you.
I think I might be on a committee pretty soon. I hear the city does a lot of that. But I have a good friend who wrote a book about leading with creative intention. And in her book, she says that you'll learn more about somebody in 15 minutes of play than you will working with them in a year. And I remember reading that statement and thinking, I have the best job in the world because I get to play all the time. Not all the time, but I do have access to swimming pools and great people like Darcy who can whip me into shape pretty quickly. But we also get to experience kids playing and just being kids, going outside and playing in the park, and people coming and running down the pathways at Eau Claire. So I see all these microcosms of people being well and being active. And I often think to myself, if we're being a hub for that, if we're giving people an opportunity to do that for themselves, then we're on the right track. And I think in partnership, we can do a lot more with the city and other partners. but that means getting outside. It means taking time to put your feet in the grass and enjoying the opportunities that are around you. It doesn't take necessarily a fitness center to do that, but the appreciation that they're in a busy, hectic life, that approach to balance and the gift of the natural world, like James Talbot was talking about, there are many, many benefits to us physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically to be outside. So the vitamin green, as some of our research friends in British Columbia say, is a really important tool for us to have in our back pockets. So more play and more vitamin G.
I thought vitamin G in British Columbia was something different, but
It's that too.
that's another thing. We've got a microphone. I think, Megan, do you have that microphone? Does anybody in the audience have a question, a comment that you want to make to our panel? We've got a hand up right in the middle here. And we'll just make this organic. You can ask it to the panel. You can ask it to an individual, whatever you like.
Hi. Hello. I have a, Dr. Talbot talked earlier about parks and the value of parks. And I'm lucky to live in a neighborhood that has several beautiful parks. And it's right beside a school. So we have a playground, and we have a baseball diamond, and it's a great park. But 10 o'clock at night, that park changes. And we get kids that come to the park that aren't there to play on the playground, and they come there to drink and to do other things. And so the park turns into a drinking party kind of place. And so the next morning, my husband and I and others are in the park picking up the can. And we're getting great exercise because we're picking up the cans, but there's broken glass and there's all kinds of things. I think the kids sometimes get exercise because the trampoline across the street from us has been moved onto the middle of the street. The big, beautiful rocks in the gardens have been moved and put across the street, and we thought, oh, you know, if a motorcycle comes around the corner or a car, it's quite a disaster. So the park has changed from being a really wonderful thing in the neighborhood to being not such a great thing. And I just wondered if anybody in the room might have some suggestions on how we can make that park nice all the time and to prevent the issues that probably some of you have in your parks. Thank you.
I think one of the audience is going to answer.
Yeah,
You guys just cool your jets. Maybe introduce yourself as well. If you
Hi,
don't mind.
I'm Catherine Halkett from Sport Calgary.
Excellent.
I also used to work for the Federation of Calgary Communities. And one of the studies that we were involved in there was that very thing and what you can do to make parks useful at night. And the simplest and one of the most effective that they found, particularly in Riley, was put in yellow lights. Because it makes the kids look ucky to each other. And they just go away. They go away. So it was as simple as that, changing the lighting. And it made, it changed by about 80% of the traffic. So sometimes simple things can be much more effective than let's get more policemen in there and show their guns and things. Yeah. Change the lights.
Great question, great answer. That reminds me, in the early 90s, they were trying to keep kids away from the LRT stations late at night, so they would blare classical music into the LRT stations. I remember calling Calgary Transit, and I was a teenager myself, and they thought I was complaining about, getting rid of a place to do derelict behavior, but I really just wanted them to add a second symphony. Just the same one over and over. Anyway. Other questions from the crowd, from the audience, maybe even other answers? Right over here.
I'm Lisa McGlaughlin. I work with Alberta Recreation and Parks Association with the Communities Choose Well initiative. And I guess this kind of actually ties into a comment that I was going to make in answer to the question that you asked, as well as to your comment, Candy. Hi, nice to see you again. So I guess part of it for me is if there's one thing that I think we really need to change as part of this whole wellness movement is, I shouldn't stand too close to that, is opportunities for people to connect and really changing the social fabric of our city. I think that we all find communities in different places around the city, but I think that when we go home into our neighborhoods, a lot of the time, how much do you really know your neighbors? How much are we really watching out for each other's, I don't have kids myself, but how often are we watching out for each other's kids on the streets? How often are block parties happening? How often are those those things that we, hear our parents remembering from their days, how are those happening anymore? And I think that those kinds of things, and I don't have any specific studies or examples to quote off the top of my head, but I've heard a lot of examples from communities across, North America, and I'm sure many other places as well, that by engaging all members of the community, you can address those kinds of issues. So if, finding out who are, the users of that park, why are they, engaging in those kinds of behaviors? Are there opportunities for them in other places in the community to have an outlet? Do they feel a sense of ownership over that space, and how can that be facilitated through things like, art projects and other kinds of activities taking place in that same space. So I think it's really a matter of making our communities a place where everyone is welcome and engaged and feels like they belong. So I think that's a huge piece that we could really work on.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question for our panel or a comment before we wrap up? Right here up in front. Oh, okay. You've been told, Mark. You've been told.
The boss has ruled.
Hi, I'm Evan Gail Braithwaite. I work in Councillor Woolley's office. And one of the questions I had is, we keep seeing all these tremendous opportunities for more wellness. I think wellness is being recognized as something that's really integral to making a great city or a great community or a great place. But at the same time, we're also seeing that the statistics say that wellness isn't being taken seriously by a lot of people. Sedentary activity and preventable illness is going to pass smoking, I think I heard, as the #1 preventable killer of Canadians. This generation might not outlive their parents for the first time in history. So while the opportunities are expanding, it also seems like in a lot of respects, we're driving down the wrong road. And there seems to be a disconnect. And so I'm wondering if you guys can touch on why you think that is, and how, through your own specific lenses, how do we address that and connect with people that, I mean, right here you're preaching to the choir really, but how do we connect with the people who aren't engaging in wellness, even though those opportunities are becoming more and more plentiful?
Complex question. Unpack it as you will. Maybe we'll start with you, Joe.
I would say, it's a great question, and I think you're right. There's a lot of lip service given to a lot of things, but it does come down to a certain degree to that embedded versus external. So that sedentary life is because there isn't that leisure and wellness embedded in everyday life. So, and it's hard to put a policy onto that. So it's really about trying to create an environment, and I think everyone spoke to it. Everyone spoke to leaders, to examples, to policy, to actually changing facilities, et cetera. All of those things towards an aim of social integration, and then physical activity and wellness integration into daily life. We're not there, but I think if we could move there, if we had that as a focus, that would be a great, great focus.
Go ahead, Pam.
Within the workplace, we are looking to bring we are currently split between Bow Valley Square and Gulf Canada Square, and then there's going to be a shift of everyone in Bow Valley coming into Gulf Canada. So from the workplace perspective and the environment within the work, that is definitely being looked at to change how we work, not only from a collaborative perspective, but also from the physical way we work, so that we're not sitting all the time. And so we have desks that do the sit stand, so then it's actually, do we use that? So it's, I look to my team to model that within HR as well, and I'm trying to influence that. But then within our our change management folks that are going through this process right now to assist with this, it's going to be a shift in how we work and what the environment looks like, and people are going to have to change, and change doesn't come easy with that because it's been so embedded in our lifestyle to sit at your computer. For here in Calgary, different for our folks in the field, but so that is something as an employer we recognize that, and we're trying to make the changes for that. What the results will be, I'm not sure.
Anybody else on the panel want to tackle that one, or should we take our next question?
You can do a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a great question because I think it's not a quick answer. It's a social change, and that's consistent with smoking. That doesn't happen in 2 years or 5 years or 8 years and 10 years. It sometimes has to happen over a generation and a half or something. But I think it's very interesting, I think what the healthcare system through primary health care is doing can do some other things as well in terms of motivation as well as opening access. Those are two pieces. I loved your point, know your numbers. If we started telling kids now at a certain point, know your numbers and what those numbers mean and how you assess that, and then you can choose from Star Trek alternate futures, right? Let people understand what alternate futures look like, because you make a choice, and it's not losing 50 pounds before the wedding, because it's hard to do. It's what it takes over time and daily decisions that predict alternate futures. And how do we educate people about this choices of this outcome? And also, and I think that the thing with the primary healthcare networks that are developing, which I find quite interesting, is the docs, you're in, you're out. Let's be quite frank with you. But in terms of a more holistic approach to what your numbers might mean and understanding those things, is we can embed that in other ways to bring about, that's going to be an overall social direction that can make that change in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Maybe we'll make this the last question because we want to get on to some other conversation. Go ahead. No pressure.
Question for Joe, I guess. Having come from Europe and now being in Canada, how did you compare the access to recreation facilities in schools to that of Canada, and also vacation entitlement from employers to that of Canadians?
I can only speak to schools for to a little bit. I didn't spend that much time looking at that, but overall, and I think we've all heard this, lots and lots of studies about this. It is quite different in Europe, and I think Europe does some things very well, and they do other things not so well. How many of you have been to Amsterdam? How many of you have almost been killed by a bicycle? Huh? Okay, so you can take some things that are great and you can put them to the extreme, and you think, well, it's probably not so great. And so life is, and lifestyle and daily life is viewed quite differently, and I do see it changing in the major urban centers, and it's becoming very corporate, very 60 hours a week, 80, 100 hours a week, whatever it is. But then you go to many other places and you still see that the tradition is being upheld, and you can call it slow living and whatever you want, and I think some of those are a little bit cliche, but it's really about a way of life that understands there are very good and important things that should not be compromised. It's how you eat, it's how you spend time with other people, it's how you go to work, what you do at work, all of those things, family, all of those things. And there are big parts of that continent that are not willing to compromise on those things. And I think that's it's wonderful.
Thank you very much. This has been sweaty and very interesting. As one of the sponsors of tonight's event, I'm going to give the last word to my colleague Shannon. And she doesn't even know I'm going to ask this, but I'm going to ask her to speak to something. The YMCA, 112 years in this city, is serious about this. And we're showing that we want to be leaders in wellness, in holistic wellness and health. And one of the projects that I'm most excited about involves kids. Shannon, even though this is not publicly announced for a couple of weeks, can you talk just briefly in closing about grade 6?
Absolutely. So in partnership, and am I allowed to announce?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So we have a great partner in the Calgary Flames, and we'd identified an opportunity to engage kids when they're in grade 6, which is a critical turning point in their lives. They've gone from the big fish in the little pond to little fish in the big pond, the major life transition, and that we wanted to provide an opportunity for kids to have a healthy recreation experience and that holistic experience. So we, effective September, are going to be providing every child in grade 6 in the city of Calgary a 1-year YMCA membership. Which, and really credit to the Calgary Flames Foundation for Life for acknowledging the importance of something like that and jumping on board with us to do that. So through a series of very quick activities we'll do over the summer to plan for this, we'll have things like Flames Fridays, where we already have sort of an open afternoon for youth to come in and have some time in our facilities and engage with activities. That will go through kind of a little bit of a revamp, if you will. But it's a great opportunity for us to really provide children and youth that opportunity to belong, grow, thrive, and lead the same areas that we've just talked about. So in terms of health and wellness, we know that grade 6 area is a really important time. So we hope that by providing this opportunity for kids, that it's something that leads to a lifelong wellness adventure experience, and that they develop some healthy skills along the way. So we're very excited about it, and you'll hear more about that starting in June.
Thank you very much. We're doing it. You're doing it. There's lots more to do in the city, and we're proud to be a part of it. Thank you to Calgary Economic Development for another great Soul of the Series, Soul of the City. Let's hear it for Megan and the team.